Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO of the Grenada Transport Commission, board members of the Grenada Transport Commission, members of the media, viewers at home and in the diaspora, good morning all. We all know that transportation is very important to Grenada and to Grenadians, and unfortunately it has been neglected for many years. Today it is our greatest pleasure to introduce the newest Grenada Transport Commission. Without further ado, I'd like to turn you over to Permanent Secretary with responsibility for transportation to make some opening remarks.
Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister and Minister with responsibility for transport, Mr. Francis Paul, Chair of the Grenada Transport Commission, Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO of the Transport Commission and other members of the Commission, members of the media present and online, listening and viewing public, good morning to you. Some liken the proper management and regulation of the transport sector in any state as a matter of national security. And this point is made having regard to the critical importance that this sector plays in economic and social development. Economic progress cannot be sustained without a properly managed and regulated transport sector, especially public transport, that is safe, reliable, and affordable. Cognizant of this fact and understanding the sheer importance of this sector, the government acted swiftly to establish the statutory authority, that is the Grenada Transport Commission, based on the Road Traffic Amendment Act of 2020. And so the Grenada Transport Commission was reconstituted in February 2023. Since then, a tremendous amount of work has taken place to fully establish this extremely important body, which in essence is the implementing arm of the Division of Transport within the Ministry of Infrastructure. The Commission is committed to improving the quality and safety of transportation services in Grenada and to promoting sustainable mobility solutions that benefit all residents and visitors to our island. Today I'm pleased to present to you the group that will drive and reform, modernize and transform the transport sector in Grenada. It is my honor to introduce the following members of the Commission. Mr. Francis Paul, a graduate of the University of the West Indies in 1999 and Sir Hugh Wooding Law School in 2001. Mr. Paul has led a long and distinguished career in the legal profession in Grenada since 2001, when he was admitted to the local bar. He holds an LLM in dispute resolution. He's a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, a court-appointed mediator, and current president of the Grenada Bar Association. In recent times, Mr. Paul has also acted as a magistrate. Mr. Paul currently leads his private practice, Francis K. Paul and Associates, mostly in the area of criminal law since 2009. Mr. Paul is the current chair of the Grenada Transport Commission. Ms. Jasmine Alexander. Ms. Alexander holds a diploma in electric engineering technology from Radio College of Canada, Toronto, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Business Management from the University of the West Indies. She has over 17 years experience in the area of human resource management and has also worked in the areas of quality assurance and information technology. She has held managerial roles and worked in various disciplines as quality assurance manager, database and IT manager, and human resource manager. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Jasmine Alexander, Vice Chair of the Grenada Transport Commission. Mr. Audrey Campbell. In 2008, Mr. Campbell earned an engineering degree from Carman University, marking the start of his professional career. His initial foray into the engineering world was with Caterpillar Inc., the world's premier manufacturer of construction and mining equipment. Over an 8-year tenure, he specialized in measurement systems design and large engine development, showcasing his knack for innovative engineering solutions. Currently, he leads the Global Human-Machine Interface Controls team at CNH Industrial, focusing on new product development. CNH Industrial stands at the forefront of agriculture and construction machinery and a world-class equipment and services provider. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Otway Campbell, a leader in his industry and a member of the Grenada Transport Commission. Mr. Hy Gibbs, who is joining us online from Mexico. Ms. Gibbs worked at the Ministry of Infrastructure as an urban physical planner between 2009 and 2019, and 2023. She is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Autónoma del Estado de Mexico in urban planning. She's a graduate of the Beijing Jiaotong Transport University in urban and rural planning. Another leader and technical expert in her field, Ms. Hy Gibbs, member of the Grenada Transport Commission. Mr. Ken Lewis. Mr. Lewis attended the Universidad de Oriente in Cuba, where he completed double degrees in transport and political economics. He holds advanced degrees from City College of New York in transportation planning and in management from the New York University. Mr. Ken is a distinguished professional in the field of transportation, whose extensive experience, academic achievements, and history of building systems have established him as a forward thinker in the sector. His role as a co-founder of the Drivers Cooperative, a 10,000-member worker cooperative in New York City, has been a towering achievement. He has worked as a senior manager at the Metropolitan Transport Authority, MTA, in New York, another leader and expert in his field. Mr. Ken Lewis, member of the Grenada Transport Commission. ASP Randall Batiste. ASP Batiste was enlisted in the RGPF on the 10th of February 1997, promoted to the rank of corporal in 2004, sergeant in 2006, inspector in 2016, and assistant superintendent in April 2023. ASP Batiste has had a long and distinguished stint in traffic department from 1998 to present, and was appointed officer in charge of traffic throughout the state of Grenada, CARICOM, PT Martinique from May 2022 to present. ASP Randall Batiste, member of the Grenada Transport Commission. Alva Browne, Permanent Secretary with Responsibility for Transport. Very briefly, graduate of the University of the West Indies and the University of Malta, Permanent Secretary since 2015. Allow me now to reintroduce to you Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO of the Grenada Transport Commission, as he was introduced before in March when he just took office via press release. Mr. Bartholomew comes to the position with over 25 years of experience in fleet management, engineering, and procurement, and 15 years in executive management and corporate planning. Mr. Bartholomew brings expertise and a proven track record that is vital to this role. His exceptional leadership, strategic acumen, and problem-solving skills position him well to drive the transformation in the transportation sector in Grenada. Before assuming this role, Mr. Bartholomew served as senior engineer and later as consultant at the Public Service Transport Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. He also held the position of Chief Executive Officer at the Vehicle Maintenance Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. He's an alumnus of the University of Westminster, the Bolton University, UK, and San Fernando and John S. Donaldson Technical Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO of the Grenada Transport Commission. This team before you will drive, as I said before, the transformation of the transport sector in Grenada over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. Thank you for the introduction of our board. And just by way of recap, Mr. Francis Paul, Chairman, Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO, Jasmine Alexander, Hatway Campbell, Sinai Gibbs, Ken Lewis, ASP Randall Batiste, and of course, PS Alva Browne. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'd like to hear from our CEO, Mr. David Bartholomew. Mr. David will speak about some of the initiatives that the Grenada Transport Commission will be spearheading. Okay, we'll take Mr. David Bartholomew after we hear from our chairman, Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Madam Press Secretary. Mr. Dickon Mitchell, Honorable Prime Minister of Grenada and Minister of Responsibility for Transportation. Mr. Alva Browne, Permanent Secretary, responsible for transportation. Mr. David Bartholomew, CEO of the Grenada Transport Commission. Fellow members of the Commission, press, viewing and listening members, good morning to all. I'm happy to be here and happy to be part of this dynamic team, a team that is poised to transform the transportation sector in Grenada. Now, let me just tell you about our mandate and what gives us that authority is the Road Traffic Amendment Act number 9 of 2020, which can be found online, laws.gov.gd. And Section 2A1 of the Act, just reading from the Act, states, there is hereby established the Grenada Transport Commission, which shall be a body corporate, to which Section 49 of the Interpretation and General Provisions Act, Chapter 153, shall apply. Now, the mandate as set out, the Grenada Transport Commission shall advise the Minister on all matters pertaining to road transport and transport, including the following matters: transport rates, fares, tolls, dues, or other charges, license duties, and fees in respect of motor and other vehicles, the needs of any area or areas in relation to transport, and that's include the provision of adequate, suitable, and efficient services, and the elimination of unnecessary or unremunerative services, and the coordination of all forms of passenger and good transport. Importantly, road safety, the regulation and control of traffic, regulating road transport, standards to be prescribed for vehicles to be used in public, commercial, and private transportation, regulation of public transport infrastructure, including car park facilities, terminal facilities, bus stop, and roundabout facilities, measures for controlling public, private, and commercial transportation, and establishing conditions under which they may operate, and any other matter affecting traffic or transport that the Minister will refer to the Grenada Transport Commission. So you see, it's quite a heavy area. It's quite a heavy mandate. And I want to make it clear, because in the past, I know that when you hear Grenada Transport Board, which was the former entity that was poised and have these responsibilities, you think only one thing: bus stickers. So I'm happy to have explained now, so the public will understand that it's not only bus stickers. The GTC has a big responsibility. We have also a CEO, as you heard, which was not appointed by mistake, or which was not appointed on a whim. The Act, Chapter 2E1, states that the board shall appoint a chief executive officer on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. The chief executive officer shall be responsible for the management of the affairs of the Grenada Transport Commission in accordance with the decisions of the board. So we are happy also to have a CEO on board that would manage the operations of the GTC. I think that's basically set out our mandate, our responsibilities. And over to you, Madam Press Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. We'd now like to hear from our CEO, Mr. David Bartholomew, and he will speak about some of the initiatives that the Grenada Transport Commission will take on this year.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Mr. Alva Browne, the PS. Mr. Francis Paul, the chairman of the Grenada Transport Commission, all the other board members, and everyone else, all protocol observed. I am here to serve, and I'm ready to serve, and I think I'm equipped to serve. I'm very, very pleased that I was selected for such a transformational activity or process. I'm very, very pleased. And I'm pleased for more than one reason. Transportation affects every single person. Small, young, old, every single person on the island or the tri-island state, right, will or is affected by the transportation system that is provided. And another reason that I'm very, very pleased to be sitting here among you all, and I'll permission to just throw in this, good. I feel that I'm giving back, and I want to give back to Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, because my parents came from Grenada. Both my mother and my father are Grenadians. So I feel that I'm giving back and lending my experience, my knowledge, my skill to this tri-island state. You know, I've been here about 2 months now, and I've had the opportunity to traverse the length and breadth of Grenada with my team, and I must say I had to commend my team. They have been really holding my hands through this learning process. I must commend them. Right? And I've been able to observe a lot of the things that you all talk about all the time. You know, I've walked the walk from Sauters to St. George's. Throughout, I've made the loop a couple of times. You know, I've visited all the terminals, or the 3 terminals that we have: St. George's, Granville, Sauters, and you know, what I saw wasn't what should be. You know, when you look at, and I'll be brief, when you look at St. George's, you know, it's not what we should be offering. And I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so grateful that this initiative is taking place. I'm so grateful, you know, that the Prime Minister is really key on it, because I'm getting my feedback from the PS. He's always asking, the Prime Minister wants to know what's happening, where we going with the project, how we get along with the project. And I'm very pleased for that, you know, because when I walk through St. George's, you know, the state of that place it's not right, for want of a better word. You know, it's dark, it's hot, and we have this citizenship inhaling these toxic oxide, nitric oxide, all the emissions, because the place is enclosed and the buses pass through the middle there, you know, and that is not right. That's not right at all. When we look at other places, we look at Granville, you know, there's no shelter. There's no shelter from anything in Granville. There was a covering, but it doesn't stop you from the element from getting to you. There's no seating for the elderly. You know, there is when it's dusty. When it's dusty, the dust flows. The dust blows on people all the time. If it rains, that's the end of it. You know, Sorters, same thing in Sorters. Condition, very, very deplorable condition, very, very deplorable conditions, And our aim at the Grenada Transport Commission is to reverse all that, to transform, and I like to use the word transform. We're not going to fix, we're not going to change, we're going to transform, which is change into something totally different, and to make the experience, the traveling experience, very, very positive. If I just quickly check on my notes. What are we doing now? I've been here 2 months. What are we doing? Right. One of the things we are doing is we want to address some of the things that I talked about, the long waiting times that we have. We want to address that. The implement initiatives by working with the driver operators. And I know that the Prime Minister, in my meeting with him, I had a couple of sessions with the Prime Minister, the PS, and the people. I don't know one of the things he kept saying is that the operators, we must be able to work with the operators and find a medium, because they have been doing it for over 17 years. So we must find a way to work alongside the operators to achieve what we want to achieve in moving forward. We're looking at implementing cashless systems, and that's one of the challenges that we have. In talking to the operators, they talk about safety and operating in the problem with operating in the night and late hours, and the challenge that goes with that. And what we want to do, we want to examine the possibility of using cashless systems throughout, so that safety factor will be greatly decreased. We're looking to strengthen the inspection systems, on buses. We have a lot of buses on the road, and sure that the system that we have now doesn't really go in depth in terms of the challenge that we face in vehicles that are being aged and that sort of thing. So that's a critical aspect. Safety will be a critical aspect of the Grenada Transport Commission moving forward. It will be a very critical aspect. Right? In terms of passenger comfort, we want to ensure that everyone have a beautiful experience. We want them to go into, we're using solar. We want to make all our initiative will be green. We're using solar. We want to ensure that we have air condition, where it's possible, air conditioned terminals. We want to ensure that when you're traveling, you could put on you could get Wi-Fi, access to Wi-Fi. You want to access the charging system. We want to ensure that all these things can happen so that you have a good experience. We want to ensure that when you go to get your transport, your waiting time is not 2 and 3 hours. And I've been talking to people. I live in Wester Hall, and I have to drive down. It's a pretty long stretch. It's up a hill, and I will give people a drop to come down the hill, and I'll talk to them, engage them in conversation, and I'm seeing. And that's why I pick up a lot of my information also. But I'm seeing little children, old people having to walk all that hill up and down, And I'm saying the roads are good, So we have to try to get a system that will allow our buses to reach up in those areas. We must do that. I'm driving and I'm feeling actually sorry. I'm looking at some people, with little children. They train after every couple of yards. The little child tired. They have to stop, refresh the older people. The roads are good, So we supposed to have a system, and I'm sure the Grenada Transport Commission will work on that, to get buses in the feeder routes, to get buses to go in those areas, because buses could go in those areas. And our challenge is to ensure that when we go out, and I'm saying we collectively, when we go out there to get a bus, we're not going by guess. Almost every single traveler now, when they leave home, they're leaving home not knowing or hoping that they'll get a bus when they reach out there on time to take them where they're going. We want to move to a system where you could literally time yourself. You could literally get an app on your phone that will actually tell you when the next bus is, actually tell you the bus, what bus it is, actually tell you exactly where it is. So you could sit in your house and you could sit down and check and know, okay, I'm getting a bus in 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is. So you can know to if you had to speed up or slow down the process of getting ready to travel, So all these things are things that the Grenada Transport Commission is looking into. We have been in active meeting with the operators, active meeting. We had some very good meetings with them. They have some very good ideas, which we are working with. We are fine-tuning it with them, And as a matter of fact, when I say we, I'm talking about chairman, I'm talking about the PS, and we had our good friend, their board member, Mr. Campbell. He's been here for a while with us and actively working with us. He's a very good critical thinker and actively working with us in some of these areas. He was with us in St. Patrick up to Saturday, meeting with the bus operators, the head of the bus operations in those areas, and trying to find synergies where we could actually work together. They have ideas. We're also looking at the challenge that we face in the terminus, where you have people, bunching people, crowd, and there's no bus. So you have to wait 2 to 3 hours. And we are working with them to put in a system that will allow us to clear. When a crowd builds up, it will allow us to clear the crowd, to move the crowd out. And we want to start a pilot project probably in a month's time. And then, as long as it works, then we'll move it to the rest of the country. Right? So that's something you'll see, and in terms of what we're doing, that's something you'll see that will be happening in the not too distant future. I will pause because I could go on and so I'll pause here and turn it over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. I'll open the floor for other board members if you wish to add to that. If not, we'll invite the Prime Minister with responsibility for transportation, to make some remarks. So I'll open it now to the members of the board if you have any other point you wish to add.
Honorable Prime Minister, Dickon Mitchell, Mr. Chairman, Francis Paul, Permanent Secretary, Mr. Alva Browne, Vice Chair, other distinguished guests. I just wanted to add a few words. For a very long time now, I've been sort of working behind the scenes as a board member to collect as much data for what we are about to embark on. This is a very challenging mission to transform what you have experienced for most of your lives here in Grenada. I myself grew up having to take a bus, and sometimes, we had 2 buses in Mount Morris. And that would mean, while one bus is resting, the other is parked up at a shop. You're trying to get to a class or a meeting, and you have to walk in the hot sun down the entire hill from Mount Morris to Grand Mall. And, many Grenadians face even worse situations, right? And I think the Prime Minister and his team have identified that we don't need an improvement. What we're looking at is transforming the day-to-day lives of every Grenadian so that you're not experiencing a system that has zero sustainability, zero predictability as well, and safety. Now, as the chairman said, this is not about bus stickers. This is about providing solutions to the entire transportation system. This is not about just buses. This is about you not having to dodge vehicles on the road. You not having to hit the side of a railing because you didn't have space and there are no safety mechanisms in place, you having to rely on a blind camera, or not a camera, but a mirror, right? And because your sight is not 20/20, you can't see if it's a car or a person or a dog or a sheep, right? So we're talking about top-down transformation in this country. Private driving vehicles, we want a situation where if you are trying to go from the west to the eastern side, you could leave your car at home. You could know that there's predictability that, I leave at this time, there's a bus coming at this time, I can get there, by going through a comfortable, cooled terminus and get to where I'm going and arrive on time, right? So there's been over 6 months worth of data and collection, and we are ready to work. I've been here for a week to collect more data, to understand the situation at multiple terminuses, studying the safety mechanisms in place. We are trying to break down and analyze everything that's in place right now. And as the CEO said, we're here to serve you. So this is not a situation where we are just going to be working without you and you're just going to see things that you don't know about. You will know. There will be campaigns. We are going to be trying to reach you. We are going to change our interpretation of safety as well. We want people to feel safe on the roads. Okay, so when you hear transformation, my point right now is that we are chasing all aspects of what you know today as transformation. We're going to be using every inch of our expertise to do so. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell and everyone else at the head table, and everyone listening online and everyone here. My name is Ken Lewis, and one of the things I want to point out, in addition to what everyone has said previously, is that transportation is a complex systems. Transportation is always complex systems, and so we are a poor country. We don't have all of the resources that many other people have, but we do have data, as Hartwig was talking about, and we do have a lot of information of other systems that were built. We can take experiences from many other places to improve the system. One of the things we have to be very careful about is that as a poor country, we can't afford to waste resources. And this has been something that has happened a lot throughout the history of building roads, transportation, and so on. And so we have to design systems that are going to be sustainable, and that is going to use is going to use the resources available as best we can. And there are methods. There are methods to do that, systems engineering and many of other ways. And so we are going to try to put these in our plans so that we get the best for whatever resources we have. And I think that is something that will actually drive the transformation that everyone has talked about. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. At this time, I'd like to turn over to our Prime Minister. Unless Chairman wants to.
This one is
Someone else is on.
Oh, great. Yes, I just wanted to augment what the CEO and Mr. Campbell said in terms of the initiatives that the GTC has planned. We recognized that school children are quite adversely affected in terms of access to transport to get to school. And we know that how important it is. If you can't access transport, then obviously you can't access education on time. And I too have experienced it, seeing children going to school late, standing by the road late because the buses turn halfway or they pass full. Recognizing that, we plan to roll out the school bus pilot project, which would ensure that school children have access to transportation to school. Now, in doing that, it's something that wouldn't happen automatically. And Mr. Lewis, as he always say, you have to do the research. You have to ensure that you have the data present before you roll out any project. What we are looking to do is to ensure that anything that we are rolling out has to be green, as the CEO said. So we are looking at alternative energy transportation, such as EVs. Because one of the mandates of the GTC is to ensure that we have low or zero carbon emission. Don't want to leave any carbon footprint. So that is an initiative, a pilot project that would be rolled out in the not too distant future. Also in terms of recognizing the hospitality industry. You have folks coming from the hotel most time finish at 11 o'clock, and they would have a staff bus. But for instance, you may be going to Old Wester Hall, the staff bus drop you on the Wester Hall main road. You know, most of the times, 90% of those workers are females, have to walk the distance, unsafe, you're tired, and you still have to walk home. So that's where we want to implement the night bus project. Night and weekend. Again, we're looking at EVs to roll out that project. Again, we have to do the research, gather the data. We have to implement charging stations. That, and again, is another project in itself. We have to collaborate with, obviously, GrenLink, all the stakeholders, climate resilience, to ensure that we have a framework, legislative framework in place as well, safety standards to ensure that when it is done properly and there is a smooth rollout. So the GTC is on track. We're also looking at the Eastern Corridor, that's St. David's, and the western, northern side to Surtees. We know that there is under-service there. You can plainly see it at peak times, particularly on afternoons. Yeah, from the old Cable and Wireless building, the cigarette factory, the carnage, on top of Tantine, the Sea Lake gas station, and you would see the loads of folks at the number 9 route on the terminus. So the CEO has been engaging with the operators, looking to find viable means of, eliminating that crowd, that backlog, that under-service, particularly at the number 2 route, Eastern Corridor, St. George's to Grenville. So I want to encourage, the bus operators, particularly those who are engaging in the purchase of new buses or used buses, to consider that route. It is under-serviced. Also, the mindset has to change, not only from the bus operators, but the public as well. The terminus is there to be used. If you don't use the terminus and you decide it's more convenient for you if you're coming from Grenada to drop off or select, what you are doing then is you're blocking other persons from accessing transport, because what the buses would do is obviously turn at the Select gas station, turn on the carnage, as compared to if everyone decided to go to the terminus, the bus would obviously go to the terminus. So the mindset has to change on both ends. The service is there to be used, use it, but in the meantime we are still, as I said, searching for viable ways. The CEO met with the bus operators. There is something that will be put in place. For instance, folks who live in these areas, St. Patrick, St. David's, and you may be applying other routes, say for instance the Grandlands route, on evenings. There is this plan in place that you can take a load and go up to your area if it's your last trip, or if you want to come back down and make another trip, just to ease up that load, particularly on the Carnage and the Botanical Gardens area. So we hope to see that roll out very soon, and we're looking forward to working with the operators and the public as well, because it must be a synergy. It can't be an abstract or a vacuum. We cannot do it without cooperation. As the CEO, Mr. Campbell, said, we are here to serve, but we need the cooperation of the public in order for us to transform the transportation sector.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We do need cooperation from the public and all stakeholders involved, including the busmen, parents, even people who already own vehicles and drive, because we also need your cooperation, because sometimes we do need to park the car and take a little walk into town instead of taking the bus. So thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to invite our Prime Minister and Minister with responsibility for transportation to usher in some remarks.
Pleasant morning to the Chairman, Deputy Chair, CEO, other members of the Transport Commission who are here with us in person and online, and a pleasant morning to the media and the viewing public. I want to start by thanking the Chairman and the members of the Transport Commission for agreeing to serve on the Transport Commission. I always emphasize that persons who serve on statutory bodies are essentially doing so for free. Whatever inconsequential stipend is paid to them is really tokenism, and they are giving of their time, their expertise, and their resources to serve the public. So I want to publicly thank the Chairman and his team. Since taking up this commission, literally, they have put in an enormous amount of work, and we certainly believe that in the coming months and years, Grenada will benefit from the efforts that they've been putting in. I want to start off by emphasizing that the Transport Commission is not just about public buses. It is about the transportation system in Grenada. And to a large extent, if we do not ensure that we tackle this issue in a holistic and inclusive manner, it will continue to stymie the economic development of Grenada and the social cohesion of Grenada. You can, in fact, judge a country's development by its transport system. And I would say specifically its public transport system, because the ability to move en masse, large amounts of people, and to move goods and services is critical for the development of any country. And in the context of a small island developing state, doing so in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner is even more critical, and I would also say in a resilient manner, because we face the ravages of droughts, storm surges, hurricanes, volcanoes. We can go on and on. So transportation is a fundamental pillar to the development of Grenada, and for too long we have frankly left it to private citizens to provide a public service in the form of our bus operators, and then to private citizens to fend for themselves either by buying vehicles which oftentimes we could ill afford, ill maintain, and the consequences have been quite devastating for our environment. We only need to see to the large amounts of derelict vehicles that are parked and left all over the state of Grenada to understand that this approach to transportation is not sustainable. So we recognize that to tackle this issue, we would need the support, the cooperation and the collaboration of everyone. From the trade unions movement, Employers Federation, the Chamber of Commerce, law enforcement, the general public. And so this press conference is really the start of our formal engagement and our public engagement with all of Grenada towards tackling the issue of how we improve and develop in a sustainable manner our transportation sector. The Commission doesn't have all of the answers, and even if it did, it still requires the cooperation, support and collaboration of all of our stakeholders to make sure that we can make this a reality. But as Commissioner Campbell said, this is not about improvement. We actually have to transform the transport system in Grenada if this country is going to remain viable and successful. And so it's important for us to appreciate that there are going to be some fundamental changes to some of the things that has to happen. And to that extent, I will highlight some of what we intend to do. We certainly are not going to start and end with just a CEO. The Commission has to become a full-fledged statutory body that treats with not just our traffic wardens, but also we intend to migrate the licensing and inspection of motor vehicles, which are currently handled by the Royal Grenada Police Force under the Transport Commission, We are already short-staffed of police officers, and we need them to be engaged in matters that are proper policing, and anything that could be handled by civilian authorities, we certainly need to ensure that we minimize mission creep. So the inspection and licensing of vehicles we intend to transfer to the Transport Commission, and that's one of the strategic things that over the next 12 months or so the CEO and his team will be working on. As the chairman has said, the government has already signaled by its fiscal policy that we will be encouraging the electrification of vehicles, whether fully electric or hybrid, to help minimize our carbon footprint, as well as to begin to encourage sustainability, because believe it or not, the single biggest contributor to carbon emissions in Grenada is transportation. We are burning a lot of diesel and we are burning a lot of gasoline, and in many instances we are doing it in a manner where you have one person in one vehicle burning emissions. So we are already facing in many instances gridlock on many of our roads. Our roads were not built, nor do they have the capacity to continue to sustain the large amount of private motor vehicles that are on the road. I think we could only just drive around and see that you probably can get to some parts of Grenada now walking much faster than attempting to drive. If we do not stop this trend and reverse it, the environment is going to suffer, we are going to be unhealthier, and the number of road accidents are simply going to be uncontrollable. So from a safety perspective, rolling back the amount of private vehicles that we have is one of the policy initiatives that the transformation of the transport sector is meant to achieve, because we recognize if we do not do so, the continued unsustainable path of simply having more and more vehicles on island is just something that is not going to be sustainable. And in any event, the average Grenadian's income doesn't permit him to purchase a private vehicle, so he will still need public transportation. So I'm highlighting some of those issues because I want us to appreciate that this is not just about the bus owners and the bus operators. We are very keen to continue working with them, to continue supporting them, to continue ensuring that they can organize themselves in a manner that leads to their own sustainability as well. Because in our engagements with them, we recognize that they've had, in many instances, a lack of support, a lack of strategic guidance, and they've been left in many instances to do this on their own with really no state support. So I want to take the opportunity to thank the bus owners who have continued to provide human service to the public. But I think they recognize in the current system, it is only so much they can do. It is also not sustainable, and in many instances, large parts of the public are underserved. So I want to thank the Commission. I know it's a lot of work, but I am satisfied that you are passionate about this, that you understand the importance of being successful, and that I look forward to working and supporting you in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your remarks, and I too want to say thank you to the board for your service. And it's very important to give back, and I really, really appreciate it, and I know the people of Grenada will appreciate your efforts and your service. Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to invite members of the media who may have questions at this time to pose them. We're going to go with MTV first. So please identify yourself and the media house which you represent.
Good morning all. Honorable Dickon Mitchell, CEO, Chairman, PS, other members of the Commission. I am Kayla Flavney, news reporter and journalist at MTV. I have a few questions for the head table. In terms of the active dialogue that went on with the operators, right? Was there anything on subsidies being given to them, whether it be on fuel or parts, where they go to clear parts at the port?
Well, I'll take the question, since I suppose ultimately for something like that to happen, it requires government or cabinet. There was no explicit discussions specific to those issues. I think the conversation was more general in the context of accepting that the cost of parts have not remained the same, and to a large extent, like almost everything else in the supply chain, has gone up to the fact that, in fact, even access to parts and access to buses have become a significant challenge, and so the age of the buses on our roads are getting older and older, which also poses a safety risk to the public. We certainly appreciate in several of the conversations that one of their concerns is the fact that the price has remained stagnant for a considerable period of time, and also the fact that they've been asked, and have done so, to subsidize the cost of school children, because the school fare is less than that of an adult, but a seat is a seat. So I think they've raised these concerns because they do feel to some extent that they have not received the kind of support. And if you go all back to the challenges they would have faced within COVID, for example, where there were restrictions imposed and they had to carry less persons, but you couldn't increase the fare, etc. So we do recognize that as part of the ongoing discussions, those are some of the issues that we may have to try and address, and we are certainly open to considering it, because we do recognize it's a sector that has not received, to a large extent, any government assistance at all, in any form or shape, and it is something that I think we are open to as we begin to discuss. But obviously, it has to lead to an improvement in the quality, in the reliability, in the predictability, in the cleanliness, both in terms of the physical fleet as well as reducing the carbon footprint. So this will be an ongoing discussion as we go along.
Thank you, Honorable Deacon Mitchell. I have another question. This will be directed to the CEO. In terms of lengthening the operational hours, what's the approach that is going to be taken for this?
Okay, what we intend to do, we have been meeting with the bus operators at this point in time, as probably what we call the low-hanging fruit, so immediate thing. And we are looking to work with them and increasing the amount of hours that they perform on the road. What's happening is that they had raised some safety issues, and we are meeting with them concerning those. I think one of the key barrier for them lengthening their hours is the safety issues. So we had some discussion up to this weekend on those safety issues, and it's ongoing.
Thank you, CEO. I have a last question, hopefully. In terms of the cashless system, we know abroad there is something called a Metro card, right? Can we see this being implemented down here, whether it be the physical card or the one online?
Well, I think anybody could take that one.
Yeah, so the approach for anything we do will be analysis. So when we mention to you cashless system, what that essentially means is that, as the CEO and others pointed out, there will be some form of a pilot, right? At this moment, we don't have a selected supplier or developer for that system. However, what we're doing is we're analyzing existing systems that exist, and we're starting with, a system we've already looked at, for example, SGU's system, how they work. But there are places like New York where Mr. Lewis, part of the board, a board member here, he has had that experience. Even the CEO has managed the development of cashless systems in the past. So there are tons of established sources that we can tap into. But our methodologies right now will be that rather than coming in with a national rollout, what you may see is a limited rollout in the form of a controlled experiment where we look at maybe a parish, maybe a couple routes, where we have a bus that's using, one system, and we may actually use another system in another parish. And based on the data we collect over time from there, right, one may be one that utilizes your phone, one may be a physical card, and we will test that first. And when the pilot comes to a close, then we can come to a conclusion and say, okay, this is the path forward. We may see enough negatives in the online version to where people may lose connectivity. What happens when you can't connect, right? When you go into an area where there's no connection. I'm not jabbing Digicel and any other providers, but you get the idea, right? So that at this point, it's more analysis of what's out there, and then a pilot to determine what's next. So.
Thank you, sir. That's all for now.
Just to add a little bit to what you're saying here, transportation impacts so many other sectors because when you're talking about cashless, your banking system and so many other things will also have to come into this. So that's just part of what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Any question? Rena has a question from GBN?
Yes. Rena P. Thomas, GBN. I've heard a lot from all the members of the board and some of the areas that you guys plan to tackle, but can you identify the top 3 areas you decide to tackle first, when you'll be implementing it, what's the initial step, and how soon we'll see implementation? That is what I really want.
Well, I will say I'm not so sure we can answer the question in the way it's phrased, because some of the stuff may be short term, some may be medium, some may be long term, and you may still have to start all of them immediately. So I would probably start on the physical infrastructure side. The state of the bus terminus is something that we wish to tackle immediately, but the solutions may still go into a medium to long term process. So let me start with St. George's bus terminus. It's actually been operated by the Grenada Port Authority. So the Transport Commission currently has nothing to do with it and has no jurisdiction over it. That we need to change. And we've begun the engagement with the Port Authority. We've already sort of briefed the Cabinet that this is the route we wish to go. And the same applies for the Grenville and Sutter's bus terminus, because in a sense, these 3 centers represents the physical hub where a lot of our citizens pass through. And as the CEO pointed out, it is less than desirable. So just tackling this is one of the key priorities that we intend to address. It requires a legal and a regulatory framework, because we need to be able to vest these assets into the Transport Commission. That requires negotiating with the Port Authority, getting the Minister of Finance involved, and all of the legal stuff that comes with that. In the meantime, though, we do believe, while we have to do this, that we would be in a position to begin to start the improvement of the physical amenities, particularly in the town of St. George. So that's, in a sense, on the physical side, one of the things we absolutely need to address. Immediately, in terms of actual public service, the chairman and the CEO alluded to the enormous buildup of persons, oftentimes in the sun, in the rain, outside of the bus terminus itself, or even at the bus terminus. Persons who go to St. Mark and St. Patrick in particular, quite disadvantaged. We have the additional challenge of the ongoing construction work at Molineux, and so the route itself has become even more difficult. And so what you find is that area is significantly underserved, and persons who live in that area are in a sense, significantly disadvantaged. So the initiatives that they've been talking about with the Bus Owners Association, Bus Owners Operators, is to see how we can immediately begin to put a system in place to alleviate the buildup of persons both on the eastern flank and on the western flank. So that is something that we're hoping that we can, and the CEO and so can guide, I'm saying almost immediately, once we can get agreement to sort of put in place as a temporary measure to see how we can begin to alleviate that. The third one I would say is our school children. And as the CEO has indicated, we are hoping to be in a position to begin a pilot. We are approaching the end of the third school semester, and then we have the summer period. So we are targeting September, which is the start of the new school year, to be in a position where we can have at least a pilot in operation or beginning operation in terms of how we treat with school children and the accessing of school children. I will probably stop at this point, and obviously the chair and the CEO could speak to a number of things, but they talked about the weekend bus service, the night bus service. All of these things we obviously have to work with the operators on to see how we can get those things going. But the idea would be, I think, in each case, to see whether come by September or even before we can begin some of those initiatives, because they obviously have immediate impact on the traveling public.
Thank you for that question, Rena. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Of course, money is something that everybody talks about. Any, let's say, changes or revamp when it comes to the amount of money persons would have to pay for their buses? I know that is something the Bus Association has been clamoring for some time.
Are you referring to bus fare?
Bus fare, yes.
Well, I've kind of said what the bus owners have said, and I would probably say I do have some sympathy for them because the bus fares have been stuck for a prolonged period, and as I've said, in the case of school children, the fare is even less. But you'd also appreciate that if the fare goes up, it's the traveling public that is going to have to pay more. So I think we're at the stage where we are analyzing all of this because it will not make sense to have an ad hoc or knee-jerk reaction to the situation. I think before we perhaps make a definitive decision on fares, we have to look at some of the more structural problems that we have, and I can't tell you now how we will end up, as in whether we'd have a single fare across the entire country, whether we would have fares as it is now that are differential based on routes that are more profitable, routes that are less profitable, routes that are more congested, or whether the fleet is one that is a renewable fleet as opposed to a fleet that is burning conventional fuel. As Mr. Campbell says, in a sense, the Commission is going to go through this process of the analysis of the data collection, of the engagement with stakeholders, and then to make some determination. Because the one thing I will say to you is I am not under any illusion that for the public transportation system to work, that the government cannot support it. The government will have to provide some form of financial support. The form, the quantums is really to be determined based on, in a sense, the overall studies, the analysis, and the conclusions. I should just probably take the opportunity to say so because we haven't said so, is that a transport study was in fact commissioned with the aid of the Caribbean Development Bank. That study is back with us. It should be in final form shortly. We've actually begun to share some of the findings of the study with some of our stakeholders, including the Bus Owners Association. And we're also hoping that we can use this study as part of our guide in terms of coming up with the appropriate policy and programmatic platform to address those issues. So I will say, yes, the government will have to support. I don't think we can get away from this, but how is in a sense, we are far away off from coming to a conclusion on that.
Talking about the financial support, know that the Grenada Transport Authority wants some sort of authority when it comes to the terminal. Does this mean that more money would be needed from the government side to assist with the transport sector?
Well, I think, I don't know if I should necessarily say more money. The Transport Commission would have been budgeted for. Part of what we're doing would have been already in the budget because we would have recognized that we were going to be making these changes. But we also see the bus terminus as an opportunity for a revenue-generating center. Once you have large foot traffic in any place, you essentially have a captured audience that you can provide services, goods to. And so we see it as an opportunity to create. That's why we need to transform the physical state of the bus terminus. We want to use the bus terminus as a hub that can create commercial and economic activities and give private citizens the opportunity to earn a living by providing goods and services within the confines of the bus terminus, and also giving the Transport Commission the opportunity to earn royalties, license fees, etc., advertising fees from the space in the bus terminus. So our thinking is that while initially there may have to be some investment, and that may call for additional government resources, the idea will be to turn the centers into commercial centers that could at least either break even or operate as a profit. Currently, I'm subject to correction. I do not believe that the bus terminus is operating at a profit based on the Port Authority's information, but I'm saying subject to verification. And I think that's part of the reason why we need to see how we can make sure that we have the right expertise to run the bus terminus, because that is not necessarily the forte or the expertise of the Port Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I do have 3 journalists online. We'll take their questions at this time. I see Linda Straker. Linda, if you have a question, you may proceed.
Yes, good morning. Sorry about that. Morning. Yeah, I do have a number of questions. Right. But my first question is to the Prime Minister.
We'll take 2 first. We'll take 2 first. So you can go ahead.
Yeah, my first question is to the Prime Minister. In his research regarding the Port Authority having supervisory responsibility for the terminal, was he able to discover why that decision was made then and why it potentially will not work in the best interest of the terminal now?
Well, I didn't research the circumstances under which the Port Authority is managing or operating the bus terminus. And two, the decision to have or the proposal, I should say, because the decision has not yet been made, to have the bus terminus vested in the Transport Commission is really a strategic decision on the basis that they are the entity that is going to lead the transport sector. And clearly, at least for inland transportation and public transportation, it would not make sense to have two different entities trying to deal with domestic public transportation. So this is really more a strategic decision because the Transport Commission is now up and running, and it's tasked with addressing all aspects of transportation that we want to ensure that you don't have a duplication of efforts and you have two different statutory bodies dealing with transportation and the assets that support transportation. But I think just from a commonsensical perspective, the port authorities, to a large extent, their expertise is in obviously maritime shipping and trade and ports. And while the bus terminus may have been viewed as an investment, I'm assuming that's part of the reason why they may have been operating it. This is not so much about an investment as to which is the strategic entity that should lead the transport sector in Grenada. So that's really the reasoning behind having the bus terminuses in terms of the proposal to have all of the bus terminals vested in the Transport Commission.
Thank you. My other question, whether the press secretary can decide who would answer it. They mentioned the restructuring of the transport sector. To the best of my knowledge, public transport service is offered by private individuals or companies. If two bus clash and meet in an accident on the road, automatically that's two bus less on the road. Put it aside, then now the Prime Minister announced earlier about rolling back the number of private vehicles. Buses are registered as private vehicles for hire. That's why they have the age. Can you explain what is meant when he said rolling back the number of private vehicles? And two, would the government be investing in public transportation to offer it as part of the pilot and thereafter?
I think part of the question related to what I said, so I think it's only fair that I should answer. I hope I understand the question. The point I'm making is that it's not sustainable to have the amount of private vehicles that we have on the road. And for this purpose, I'm distinguishing between private and public, not who owns the vehicle, but the use to which the vehicle is put. So we will take a public vehicle to mean a vehicle that is licensed to carry passengers, either in the form of a taxi or in the form of an omnibus, or in the form of a vehicle that is hired for public use. So we are not talking about those vehicles. And I guess if we have to describe the vehicles, we're not talking about taxis, we're not talking about buses. We are talking about vehicles that are used solely for the private benefit of the owner, which invariably is usually a car or a pickup or an SUV. Right, and the challenge we have here is that, and I think it's just from observation, you can see it, the number of vehicles in Grenada has grown exponentially. I'm not sure if we have the records, over 60,000, right? We have over 60,000 vehicles on the road. So if we inflate our population a bit and say we probably know at 120,000, it means that we have one vehicle for every two persons on the island. That is just not sustainable. It's not sustainable because I'm saying our road infrastructure cannot handle it. That's one. And two, vehicles, like all of the machines, have a shelf life. And when the shelf life comes to an end, what happens to the vehicle? What happens to the oil? What happens to the engines? What happens to the parts? And I think you've seen MIT, for example, has been trying to deal with the enormous pileup of derelict vehicles that are on our roads. It's not attractive to us. It's mosquito sites. It's not attractive to our tourism. It's not attractive to the environment. So what we are seeking to do is to encourage a system where, as one of the commissioners pointed out, that we do not waste our resources. And the wasting of our resources includes our private citizens, because if you find yourself buying a private vehicle simply because the public transport system cannot meet your needs, it means you're probably making a decision that you prefer not to make, and it means you are going to spend a lot of money simply trying to maintain that vehicle, insure that vehicle, pray to God it doesn't meet in an accident, just so you can get from point A to point B, when oftentimes those resources probably could be put to better things that you can invest in, your education, a house, a business, etc. So the idea here is that the more we can have a public transportation system that moves people en masse, where one vehicle can move more people. It's a more efficient system. The unit cost for the system becomes lower, and the carbon footprint becomes lower, because to a large extent, whether it's a bus or SUV, if an SUV is traveling from Grenville to town and it's one person in it, it's probably the same carbon footprint as if it's a bus traveling with 15 people. So the idea here is that we need to start having the discussion as to at what point do we say enough private vehicles is enough. I can give an example. There's some of our Caribbean islands in the north that limits how much vehicles each household can have, to no more than one. But there are homes in Grenada where there are 4 or 5 vehicles. Each person in the house has a vehicle. They all leave to go to work at the same time. There's no carpooling. We all end up in the traffic jam waiting for the traffic to clear. So the point I'm making is those are things we have to discuss as a country. Those are issues we have to debate upon. And then hopefully coming out of that with the appropriate data, we can make data-driven decisions that gives us the right policy on helping to improve the public transportation system. So I hope I've sufficiently answered or clarified that point.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Clarity though, with government investment in, you mentioned that within the next 12 months, we will see the movement from inspection to licensing and the timelines given for various things. What I want to know, would government be investing in a bus system for the public? Because by and large, what we have are private people operating a private service.
Okay, so, all right, sorry, I didn't take that part of the question. At this stage, I can't answer that the government will invest in a bus system. I think that's why Commissioner Campbell made the point of saying to get to a point where you roll out anything on a national scale, you need to test it and you need to have a pilot. So what I could answer definitively is that we are likely to invest in a pilot project specific to school children, for example. That may mean buying 1 or 2 electric buses at a particular school, and you then transport the children and you collect the data coming out of that to then tell you, is this something that is feasible? Is this something that is sustainable? Is it something that makes sense? Are there alternatives to it? So we are not yet at the point where we can say to you definitively we will go and buy a fleet of buses or invest in a fleet of buses. That's the first thing. Second, I would say certainly as the Minister for Transport, I would be hesitant to do so without first giving the private bus owners who have provided public transportation service all the opportunity to see how we can work with them to improve and extend the public transportation system. We don't have to own the buses, that is the government, in order to be able to work with the bus owners and the Bus Owners Association to be able to expand and improve and make more reliable the bus system in Grenada. There may be 1 or 2 exceptional circumstances where we may have to get buses ourselves. For example, if you're dealing with persons who are physically challenged, if we come to the conclusion that, for example, and I'm just giving those things hypothetically, if after the data suggests that it may make sense to have one fare for school children and adults regardless, but we understand what that will do to access to education, so the government may say in those circumstances, okay, we may either pay the school fare for school children, or we may have some alternative bus system subject to what the pilot says, specific to school children only. But we can't make those decisions by just sitting in a room and pulling a decision out of a hat. We would need the data, we would need the analysis, we'll need the pilots, and then after we've done that, we would be in a position then to go back to the public, go back to our stakeholders and say, having done ABC, this is what we are likely to do.
And just to add, not just our school children, but our senior citizens, because I know they have to be in the conversation as well. I see Nisha Paul is online. Nisha Paul and Junior George, if you have questions, you may go ahead and pose them at this time.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Junior. You may proceed.
All right, thank you. And I first want to say I'm very happy to hear about the change or the implementation of the transportation sector in Grenada. I have a question in regards to e-bikes, because I launched a e-bike, a company in Grenada just a few months ago, and we have statistics that show that a lot of people one alternative means of transportation like e-bikes. Does the government, sorry, my battery. Does the government see any incentive to assist companies like mine to enhance the amount of e-bikes on the island, or enhance that physical space?
Thank you for your question, Junior. I believe one of the board members will take this one.
Good day, sir. So to answer your question, I think I'm going to lay the responsibility on the GTC. I think what the GTC can do for businesses like yours is lay the foundation for safety, platforms for charging, determining whether or not we need to own or someone else, but making sure that those platforms are standardized and in line with the way the global community implements it. So what we can't do is we can't take the approach where we begin just laying down these impromptu charging stations, because when we're charging, we have to look at, is this high energy? Is this safe when it rains? When, a battery fire, New York, and I'm sure you're aware of this, New York has been, at one point was dealing with quite a lot of battery fires, right? And as you know, an electrical fire is a completely different type of fire to deal with. So we've started, what I will tell you is this, for some time now, the board and the GTC body have been engaging with the Prime Minister and other bodies. We presented a document that references charging stations and safety protocols, and that document references UL standards and other standards for connectors, wire gauges, the way you select, how you go about setting up and installing a charging station, level 1 and 2 charging. So we've already started engaging how we set the platform for businesses like yourself, because I know you're looking at, okay, I'm bringing in these e-bikes. Where are my customers going to charge these things? What safety protocols are in place if you have a battery fire, right? So we are already gauging, and I think that's how we begin supporting businesses like yourself. We have to create the platform, create the regulations. Right now in the United States, for example, if you want to ride a bike on a trail, right, a normal bike, there are little to no regulations. But the moment you decide to ride an e-bike, your motor has to be 750 watts, cannot be more than that. Your speed is also regulated to 20 miles an hour, because on trails you have children, you have elderly, and you can't have an electric bike going 40 miles an hour through that trail, right? That's a danger, right? That's a hazard to those people. So we are creating and crafting, and we're going to share this document with stakeholders, because we can't do this alone. But we want to do this in a manner where it's done where we can do it on time, because you guys are going ahead. You have e-bikes here. I've already heard about your service. So we're trying to create that platform, and I think once we do so, this is going to make it easier for you to know that there's a reliable safety system in place. There's a place to charge your assets as well. And I think from there, then we explore other things in which we can do to incentivize. When I say incentivize, whether it be an express lane on certain roads so that your customers can feel safe if you want to take an e-bike somewhere. So those things can come later, but having the standards and protocols in place will be very important going forward. Thank you. Hopefully, that answers your question.
But I should add, because, and that's very, very important, what Mr. Campbell has said, but I should add that we have already incentivized all electric and hybrid vehicles by removing all duties on them. So we appreciate that electric vehicles tend to be a at least initial price point, they're still higher than conventional diesel burning or gas using vehicles, and we have therefore removed all duties on it. So it allows customers and it allows those who want to get into that space the opportunity to do so at a significant reduction in well, not significant, complete removal of the duties associated with it. So I think that signals the government's support from a fiscal financial perspective to electric vehicles, including e-bikes. But I think just as crucial is what Mr. Campbell has said: if you don't have the infrastructure, if you don't have the regulation, if you don't have the safety, then it becomes less attractive, because if you have the e-bikes and you're at risk of being knocked over by a big truck on the road, then you're not going to get on the e-bike. And if we can't deal with electric fires, if we haven't trained our fire personnel, if we don't train the persons who are working in your business to how to deal with an electric fire, how to put it out, then all you need is one accident, one fatality, and the entire thing could come crumbling down. So I think I want to re-emphasize what Mr. Campbell has said and the importance of it.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister and Mr. Campbell. There is a recommendation in the comment section about training, customer service training, safety training for drivers. And I know GTA, through the Pure Excellence program, they've had training programs in customer service for drivers and taxi operators. So thank you for your recommendations, and I will encourage the head table and members of the board to go back to the chat. There are some really excellent recommendations there that you might be interested in. At this time, I'd like to invite Nisha Paul, our final journalist. If you have a question, you may proceed.
Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister and the other members of the head table. I am Nisha Paul, a freelance journalist. My question, were any considerations given to having buses run off routes? When I say that, I mean within communities, apart other than just the main road. For example, usually buses would decide whether or not they would go off routes to drop someone if they carry in load or something like that. A perfect example is like places like Appertut and Pomrose or Crowshoe. Are there any plans to for consideration for these activities?
They're all nodding, so I think they've all considered it. Who wants to take this one?
Yes, that has been one of our prime consideration. I'd mentioned it earlier in my remarks that we are very, very concerned that there are routes that are not being serviced, and the routes there are routes that drivable, for want of a better word. The buses could access those routes quite easily, and I give an example of where I live right now in Westerhall. It's a long hill, a very long hill. And I'm very concerned when I see, the elderly, when I see those children having to negotiate up and down those hills. And those hills are accessible, very accessible to any one of the buses that are in the system. So we are paying very, very close attention to that, and we'll be working with the operators to find some system, put some systems in place that will accommodate access to those routes and accommodate the citizen access to their services on those routes.
Nisha, if you have one final question, I think we can beg the indulgence of our board and Prime Minister. One final question, and then we'll wrap up for this morning.
Thank you very much. Recently, there were some humps installed at the Grenville bus terminus. I think the Prime Minister said that the terminus is currently being run by the Ports Authority. But I want to know, the busmen have been complaining about these humps. They're saying that I think they're too high. So I wanted to know if this was something that was, if this concern was also raised during the talks with the busmen. And if you can explain, obviously we know the importance of humps, but can you explain what are the considerations, what is taken into consideration when installing the humps?
I'll respond. I've given instructions for the humps to be removed. Subject to what the chair and members of the GTC said, certainly I wasn't consulted on the humps, and I will probably say this openly. there's been, in my view, significant misuse of humps on the roadway. And while there may be conventional thinking that says it should increase safety on the road, I'm not so sure that the data actually shows that. I accept there may be genuine cases where humps are required, but it is something that from a policy perspective we are going to review and give very clear directions on. And I'll give you an example of some of the disadvantages of humps, or fire trucks and so on, and emergency security vehicles and so on find it very difficult to navigate many of these humps. You just need to drive the roads as well to recognize that there's no standardization of the humps. Some are long and broad, some are sharp and tall, some of them are dangerous, and unfortunately it seems as if anytime someone raises a concern about road safety, the default position has been to simply, with no notice, with no painting, with no warning, a hump appears, whether it's on the main road, whether it's in a bus terminus, whether it's in a private road, and it is not something that, in my view, makes sense or actually enhances road safety, because you'd be amazed at the amount of accidents you have right on the hump or right before or after the hump. So it is something that we have to, and I think the GTC, it will fall within their mandate, to really review and to ensure that we minimize the use of humps. There are other road safety mechanisms that are frankly, that enhances road safety, because sometimes the humps actually increases the risk that is on the road. So that is part of the overall sort of mandate of the GTC, and I expect the CEO and so on will, with time, review and make recommendations so we can standardize this, and that we have a predictable and safe approach to the deployment of humps if we form the opinion that installing one is necessary. I mean, I will stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. There's one more question on the floor. MTV.
So this one is directed to ACP Batiste. Safety is top. Yes, period. Thank you. So this is directed to you in terms of safety, which is, of paramount importance. I would be speaking on behalf of my personal experience as well as on the behalf of others as relates to the buses. There are lots of what I would say seats that are not structured well, or well as pieces of iron that's exposed, and I know there's incidents where some school children would have ripped skirts, whether it be t-shirts stained. So can we see there being more, what we would say, inspections as relates to the bus operators, public bus operators?
Thank you very much for your question. I will not say for us to see more inspection, but I will say for us to have a more thorough inspection when it comes to public service vehicle or any vehicle. So it's just for our inspecting officers to be mindful of those things, and when it come across public service vehicle, to have a more thorough inspection internally so they can observe and deal with those situations.
And in terms of this not being followed through, can we see any pickups where they be maybe given warnings, etc.?
Well, what should happen when those things are identified, then the bus should not pass the inspection, and they should be given the opportunity to get it rectified within a stipulated period, and then follow-up should be made to ensure that it is done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I now invite final comments. It's been a long morning. We started at 10 o'clock this morning. It's almost 11:30. Such an informative press conference today. But I will invite members of the head table and other members of the board. If you have any closing remarks, you may proceed to do so.
Thank you, Madam Press Secretary. I want to thank everyone, press, viewing public, fellow commissioners, and particularly the Prime Minister for the trust and confidence that he has placed in the GTC to advise him on matters relating to ground transport. We know we have a Herculean task ahead as GTC, but we are here to serve. No task is too heavy, no task is too challenging that it cannot be mastered, and we will master it. But we can't do so without the cooperation of the public and the collaboration of all the stakeholders involved. So I'm asking everyone to work with us. We will do our part. The public must do their part, and not only the bus operators and the commuters. Because remember, the GTC reporting, advising the Prime Minister on all matters of ground transport. So again, I'm looking for that collaboration and cooperation as we move forward to transform the transportation sector in Grenada. Thank you.
Thank you. P.S. Brown.
I was sitting here saying that the chairman said it all. But just to say that, as the chairman indicated, the task before us is huge, but it's not impossible. We have a very competent and passionate team, I must say, dealing with this issue. We need your cooperation, all stakeholders. We need your cooperation. We need your support as we attempt to rebuild, not fix, but rebuild the broken system that we have before us. And I'm always very proud to say at all engagements that we have support from the top down. We have 100% support from the top down. So when we come before you, we're not coming before you not sure of ourselves and the way forward for the transport sector in Grenada. Thanks again.
Thank you, P.S. Mr. Prime Minister, you may proceed.
Sure, thank you. I want to again thank the members of the media for being with us and posing the questions, and the citizens who are viewing this live and those who will see excerpts from it later on today and during the week. I want to thank the chairman, the PS, and members of the commission and the CEO. This is an important pillar for our society. If we are going to be sustainable, if we are going to encourage economic growth, if we are going to encourage safety on the roads, safety for our citizens, this is not something that we can bury our heads in the sand and say, well, it's been like that for the last 40 years, and so we have to live it. We have to tackle it. We have to take it on. I'm excited. I'm passionate about this issue. I know the members of the commission are equally passionate about this issue. I know the traveling public is equally passionate about this issue, because this is something that is raised with us time and time again. I know that there are citizens of this country who've advocated on this, particularly the Trade Unions Council and members of the trade unions, including former President General of TAU, Senator Chester Humphrey, who I know for many decades have talked about the need to address public transportation in Grenada. And so I want to use the opportunity to encourage all sectors to join with the Transport Commission in having the dialogue and having the conversation about this issue. You will be hearing and seeing a lot more of the Transport Commission as it builds out and fulfill its mandate. We expect that in due course its website will be up and running. I believe PS has some exciting initiatives in terms of its logo design, etc., that will be rolled out, and members of the public will be invited to take part in. And so as it begins to engage more and more, you will feel its presence, and I certainly look forward to it making a significant and improved difference in the lives of our citizens. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. It has been a very informative morning, and we look forward to the rollout of all the plans that the Grenada Transport Commission has. We also look forward to our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, who will become the chairman of the CARICOM come July. I just want to put that out there right now, and he'll be championing digital transformation, ICT, also cybersecurity. And while we're on cybersecurity, I just want to encourage you all to be kind to others. Be kind to somebody today. Sometimes we look at the chat and you're bullying our media workers, you're bullying the people who are making comments. Just be kind to one another. For a change today, just try. Be kind to somebody today. And let's be respectful of others, be respectful of people's comments and their values and their views. So I am Neela Etienne, Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, and from all of us here at the Government Information Service, Ministry of Infrastructure and Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation and Transformation, thank you all for joining us. Have a terrific Tuesday.